They told us it was just a fight. 2 teenagers. 1 argument. 1 moment of rage under a high school track tent. But that story collapsed the second investigators found a hidden $100,000 transfer buried inside a shell company owned by Carmelo Anthony's parents, just 72 hours before the stabbing. Now, this isn't about teenage violence anymore. It's about burner phones, crypto mixers, encrypted messages, and the chilling possibility that someone paid for this to happen. So the question is, was this a crime of passion, or a murder for hire? At first, it seemed like a tragic but all too common story, an argument between 2 high school boys that escalated into something deadly. Witnesses say it happened in seconds. Austin Metcalf, a respected student athlete, reportedly asked another student, Carmelo Anthony, to leave the team's tent during a crowded track meet. Words were exchanged, tempers flared, and then, it happened. According to several students present, Carmelo allegedly reached into his backpack and muttered something along the lines of, "Make me." The next moment was chaos. By the time anyone realized what had happened, Austin was already on the ground. Stabbed. Bleeding. Panic spread through the stadium while emergency responders rushed in. Carmelo was arrested at the scene. His parents stayed silent. No public statements. No media appearances. The story circulated in local headlines as a senseless act of teen violence. Another tragedy in a broken system. But that wasn't the full story. Not even close. Because behind the emotional tributes and social media outrage, something was hiding. Something buried deep, beneath business accounts, digital footprints, and burner phones. And it all started to unravel when the IRS noticed a flag in the books. The turning point wasn't in the courtroom. It wasn't a witness or a dramatic confession. It was a number, 6 figures, sitting quietly in a financial report no one was supposed to look at. Federal investigators were first tipped off by the IRS, who flagged suspicious movement in one of Anton Metcalf's mother's business accounts. At first glance, it looked like routine bookkeeping. But buried deep under layers of business activity was a mysterious $100,000 transfer, sent just 3 days before Austin's death. The money didn't go straight to a person. It passed through a shady LLC, one that prosecutors now claim is tied to a known associate of a school employee who was working the track meet the night of the stabbing. It looked like someone had carefully designed this trail to stay hidden, until it didn't. And then came the detail that flipped the entire case on its head. The account that received the funds was deleted just 15 minutes after Austin's stabbing was reported. Deleted. Wiped clean. Gone. It wasn't just suspicious, it was methodical. This wasn't someone panicking and covering their tracks. This was someone who had planned to vanish. Investigators quickly connected the dots. The transfer was timestamped exactly 72 hours before the attack. The LLC? A shell corporation with no active history until that week. And just like that, this case wasn't about a teenage outburst anymore. It was about premeditation. It was about money. It was about intent. And that intent was about to unravel everything. While the public tried to process the $100,000 bombshell, federal investigators were already peeling back the digital curtain, and what they found was chilling. The money trail didn't just stop at the LLC. It was funneled into an unregistered digital wallet, the kind often used in the darker corners of the internet. Even more alarming? That wallet had gone through a cryptocurrency mixing service, a tool designed to scramble the origin and destination of money, commonly used by criminals to erase their tracks. But digital footprints are rarely perfect. The FBI traced the wallet's last known access point to an IP address just blocks away from the stadium where Austin Metcalf was stabbed. Then came the surveillance footage. On the night before the stabbing, Carmelo Anthony's mother was caught on camera entering a local gas station with an unidentified man. Prosecutors now say this man is a known money middleman, someone whose entire business is helping clients clean large amounts of questionable cash. In the video, Carmelo's mother appears to hand over a white envelope. 4 hours later, that same man was caught using a burner phone in the parking lot outside the track stadium. Meanwhile, Carmelo's father was seen pacing outside the venue during the event, clutching a phone and visibly anxious. At the time, nobody thought much of it. But with the new evidence in hand, his presence now looks like anything but innocent. Still, the Anthony family said nothing. No interviews. No explanations. But the silence didn't help them. If anything, it made the suspicion worse. Because while they stayed quiet, the data kept talking: timestamps, messages, IP addresses, surveillance footage. And the final clue from that night made one thing horrifyingly clear. They were all connected. And that connection was about to form something prosecutors would call the triangle of intent. Prosecutors gave it a name that sent a chill through the courtroom. The triangle of intent. 3 points. 3 roles. 1 goal. According to investigators, this triangle began with Carmelo's mother, who handed off a white envelope to a known money launderer caught on gas station surveillance. That man, the middleman, used a burner phone just hours later near the stadium. And that same burner number? It pinged directly to Carmelo Anthony on the night of the stabbing. Mother middleman Carmelo. A straight line of communication. A closed circuit. And if prosecutors can prove that line carried not just words, but instructions or coordination, the entire case shifts into first-degree territory. But that was just the beginning. In court, they played another piece of evidence. A voicemail from Carmelo's father, pulled from an encrypted messaging app, sent just 4 hours before Austin Metcalf was stabbed. His voice was calm. Too calm. Everything is prepared. Simply use common sense. You are aware of the stakes. The room fell silent. Even the judge sat still for a moment longer than usual. This wasn't a parent trying to protect a child. This sounded like a man managing a crisis, or sealing a deal. It didn't help that just days before the attack, both of Carmelo's parents were seen entering a private office building registered to another dormant shell company owned by Carmelo's father. That company had no documented business activity for over a year, until that very week. Sources say the $100,000 payment was initiated soon after that meeting. And remember that crypto wallet? The final transfer happened within 36 hours of the stabbing, broken into multiple withdrawals to avoid detection, just like something out of a laundering manual. But here's the kicker. Every trace, every move, every dollar, every message, circles back to that triangle. A mother moving cash. A middleman using burner phones. A son walking into a tent with a weapon and a line to deliver. And what came next proved that triangle might not just be a theory. It might be a plan. If the digital trail was damning, what came next was devastating. Prosecutors revealed that the LLC used to move the $100,000 wasn't just shady, it was fraudulent. A shell company, registered in Carmelo's mother's name, posing as a non-profit organization. On paper, it looked legitimate, until you looked closer. No staff. No website. No services. No history of activity. Just one transaction. One enormous payout. and one violent death that followed. That fake nonprofit moved exactly $100,000 into a dormant account, and within hours, the money vanished, scattered across untraceable crypto wallets. The final ping from that account? It came from a location near the stadium, while the track meet was underway. This wasn't sloppy. It was surgical. With each revelation, the courtroom shifted from curiosity to horror. Even the defense team, once vocal and aggressive, began leaning in quietly, eyes wide, whispers tight. Then came the formal announcement. First-degree conspiracy charges were filed not just against Carmelo, but also against both of his parents. Why? Because the prosecution wasn't just alleging negligence or cover-up anymore. They were alleging premeditation. They were building the case that Carmelo's parents didn't just help him hide the crime. They helped prepare for it. And the evidence was piling up. The money trail leading to the shell nonprofit. The burner phone logs showing coordination. The encrypted messages like "a funds cleared" and "no trail." The secret office meeting that reactivated a long-dead business. One federal investigator summed it up best. You don't wake up and move $100,000 by accident. And you sure as hell don't do it 3 days before a murder. Suddenly, the spotlight shifted. No longer on Carmelo the high school student, but on the family behind him. Because while one person delivered the blow, the question became, who else helped him lift the knife? And as prosecutors hinted at a deeper manipulation, the case took a darker turn. Was Carmelo even the mastermind at all, or was he just the weapon? With every new piece of evidence, a disturbing theory began to take shape. What if Carmelo Anthony didn't act alone, not just physically, but mentally? What if he wasn't the mastermind, but the instrument? Prosecutors started floating a chilling possibility that Carmelo was manipulated, prepped, and emotionally conditioned by his own parents to commit the act, while they handled everything behind the scenes. The evidence fits the pattern. Encrypted messages like "a funds cleared," "isolate," "no trail," and "everything happens quickly" weren't written like panicked reactions. They read like instructions. Cold. Controlled. Logistics, not grief. Court documents also revealed private messages from Carmelo's father days before the stabbing, suggesting legal preparation and emotional detachment. And those burner phone calls the night before? Not one of them included a 911 call, a lawyer, or any emergency planning. They were coordinated digital smoke signals, masked in encryption and timed to vanish. Then came the courtroom bombshell that rattled even the most hardened reporters. A federal forensic expert testified that, according to the call metadata, Carmelo's burner phone was active within minutes of his parents' final encrypted calls. Meaning someone may have guided him in real time. Was this all orchestrated? Were his parents the puppeteers, hiding behind shell companies, crypto transfers, and silent faces? Even Carmelo's behavior started to raise new questions. In court, he sat motionless. No outbursts. No remorse. No protest. Just a blank stare, as if he had either emotionally shut down, or was still following orders. The prosecution called it psychological insulation. Build a financial plan. Isolate your child emotionally. Let him take the fall. And the defense? They were cornered. They argued Carmelo was grieving, and the money was unrelated. But they couldn't explain the timeline. They couldn't explain the burner phone. They couldn't explain the silence. Because if Carmelo was just a teenager acting alone, why was an entire financial infrastructure moving around him like gears in a machine? What prosecutors were laying out wasn't just a murder case. It was a system. And they were about to show exactly how deep that system ran. Then came the moment that shattered the last illusion of innocence. By now, the courtroom had grown numb to twists. But what came next left it frozen. Prosecutors unveiled the final piece in their timeline. A voicemail, pulled from Carmelo Anthony's father's encrypted app, timestamped just 4 hours before the stabbing. The voice was calm, measured, unshaken. Everything is prepared. Simply use common sense. You are aware of the stakes. No fear. No panic. No hesitation. Not the words of a father mourning a son's crisis. They sounded like a partner signing off on a plan. The prosecution played it twice. And both times, you could feel the air leave the room. Carmelo didn't flinch. He barely blinked. Then came the screen. A massive timeline illuminated the courtroom. Every ping, every payment, every text, every dollar. At the center of it all, Carmelo. Connected by dotted lines to 3 words: Mom, Dad. Wire transfer. Prosecutors called it the point of no return. Because once that voicemail was played, the idea that this was anything but premeditated completely collapsed. Even the most skeptical court watchers couldn't ignore it anymore. The burner phones, the crypto mixers, the fake nonprofit, the hidden meeting, the surveillance footage, the white envelope, the pacing outside the stadium. It all led here. And just when it felt like nothing more could be revealed, the FBI dropped another bombshell. A hidden shell company, registered months before the killing, under Carmelo's mother's name. A company with no employees, no public presence, just one financial action. It had moved exactly $100,000 into a dormant digital account that was later accessed from the stadium parking lot the night of the murder. And within 3 hours of Carmelo's arrest, the account was shut down completely. This wasn't just about preparing an alibi. It was about wiping out a footprint before the world even knew where to look. The courtroom didn't gasp anymore. They stared. Because what once looked like a teenage outburst now looked like a calculated execution plan with multiple players, multiple layers, and one dead teenager at the center. And the last thread holding the Anthony family's story together just snapped. But there was still one section left to uncover. The part where the public would decide. Is this a tragedy, or was this treason within a family? By the time the final pieces were laid bare, the courtroom wasn't just filled with tension, it was thick with certainty. What started as a simple narrative, a teen fight gone wrong, had morphed into a case of calculated conspiracy, corporate manipulation, and what many are now calling a family-led operation to facilitate a murder. And the public? They'd already made up their minds. Screenshots of the gas station footage, the burner phone chart, the $100,000 payment trail, all went viral. One tweet read, "This wasn't a stabbing. This was a funded hit. And they thought we wouldn't notice." But the true devastation wasn't online, it was inside the courtroom. There, in the front row, the Metcalfe family sat motionless, watching their son's memory used as evidence in a war they never saw coming. The prosecution's final blow came when they tied everything together. The fake nonprofit. The crypto-laundered funds. The private meeting days before the stabbing. The burner phone trail that led right to Carmelo. The voicemail that sounded more like a command than concern. This wasn't negligence. This wasn't panic. This was strategy. Carmelo Anthony's parents, once viewed as grieving and overwhelmed, were now seen as the architects of silence. And perhaps worse, the ones who may have set the stage for their own son to kill. Outside the courthouse, the divide was sharper than ever. Some still believed the Anthony family was being targeted unfairly. Others pointed to the evidence and called it what it felt like: a high school crime, buried under layers of money, power, and deception. And Carmelo? He didn't cry. He didn't speak. He sat there like someone who had already accepted what came next. The defense tried to shift the blame, tried to claim misunderstanding, tried to say this was all coincidence. But even they couldn't untangle the timeline anymore. Because the truth wasn't in the headlines anymore. It was in the data. The money trail. The digital fingerprints that don't lie. The Metcalfe family left the courtroom early that day. Their faces said everything. Not victory. Not closure. Just quiet exhaustion, because no matter how this ends, they already lost the one thing that mattered most. And behind them, the entire country watched, realizing what this case had become. This was no longer a story about a high school tent. It was about what happens when money, fear, and silence collide, and a young life gets caught in the crossfire. And while the jury has yet to speak, the public already has. This wasn't a heat-of-the-moment mistake. It was something else entirely. Something planned. Something paid for. And now, something that might take 3 lives down with it. As the courtroom lights dimmed and the jury prepared for deliberation, one thing became clear: this case was no longer just about Carmelo Anthony. It had spiraled into something far bigger, something systemic, something that asked a deeper question. How many people knew, and stayed silent? The federal investigation has already expanded. Subpoenas are now reaching beyond the Anthony family, into the school district, event security staff, and even administrators who signed off on the LLC's paperwork months before the murder. One name on that paperwork? A corporate attorney with a sealed past and quiet ties to other high-risk shell companies across Texas. The FBI confirmed they're looking into a broader network of financial manipulation, and not just in this case. The tactics used: shell nonprofits, cryptocurrency mixing, encrypted messaging apps, aren't just signs of a cover-up. They may be the signature of an organized playbook used in multiple crimes hiding behind family-owned businesses. Meanwhile, the Metcalfe family is now calling for a full public audit of the Anthony family's finances, business licenses, and every legal filing they've made in the past 3 years. Because if this $100,000 was just one transaction, how many others slipped under the radar? Back in court, Carmelo sat in silence, the reality setting in. Not only was his freedom at stake, so was everything his family ever built. The cars, the businesses, the reputation. All now wrapped in suspicion. All now possibly built on blood money. And then came the quiet leak that sent social media into a frenzy. A private investigator working with the Metcalfe family claimed there may be a second payment, even larger, tied to another incident currently sealed in juvenile court. If true, it could mean that Carmelo wasn't just manipulated once, he was trained, groomed, used. But even if the jury convicts, the question lingers. Was justice served, or did we only scratch the surface? Because behind every burner phone and deleted account, behind every envelope and gas station camera, there's a blueprint. And someone, somewhere, may be writing the next version right now. And that leads us to the one truth no one can ignore anymore. This wasn't the end of something. This was the beginning. And the next case might already be in motion.